Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Chapter 1 of Pulitzer Month on No Edit Book Reviews. For the entire month of May, I will be reading and reviewing Pulitzer Prize winning books only. We're starting things off today with 1995 Pulitzer winner in general nonfiction, The Beak of the Finch by Jonathan Weiner. Just an FYI, I am selecting the order of these books for Pulitzer Month mostly randomly, but I am going to try to space them out by genre, so I've picked something completely different to do after this one. Okay, then. The Beak of the Finch is a wonderful account of evolution happening in real time, and specifically, it's about the things that we have learned about evolution, mostly from one longitudinal study carried out by Rosemary and Peter Grant, an evolutionary biology team from Princeton University who spent over 3 decades studying the finches of Daphne Major, one of the Galapagos Islands off of the coast of Ecuador. But several other enlightening studies are mentioned in this book as well. Before the work of Rosemary and Peter Grant, a seemingly valid criticism of the theory of evolution was that because it takes place over such large time scales, we can only observe it indirectly. Even Charles Darwin thought this to be the case. Rosemary and Peter Grant didn't know it when they began their study on the Galapagos finches in 1973, but they would go on to conclusively demonstrate that this is not necessarily so. They observed and thoroughly documented evolution by means of natural selection happening within the span of just generations for these finches. Rosemary and Peter would be some of the first among many scientists to prove that evolution is always happening all around us. Several factors made Daphne Major such a successful location for this study. Not to mention the Galapagos Islands have historical scientific significance as one of the places famously studied by the great Charles Darwin. But first, because Daphne Major is so isolated, the Grants were able to avoid factors that could convolute and possibly invalidate findings in studies like these. Also, significant selection pressures brought about by chance environmental phenomena occurred during the study. And lastly, the finches themselves are a perfect example of evolutionary specialization, as exemplified in their beaks, their diets, and their plumage. You just couldn't ask for better conditions. The Beak of the Finch is the perfect book if you feel you don't quite get the intricacies and subtleties of how evolution works. Weiner does a terrific job of showing the reader how a complex array of selection pressures affect the DNA transmission and changing morphology of the finches of Daphne Major. We go into depth on the interplay between sexual selection and predation pressure, how factors that affect mate choice as well as predator advertising dictate whose genes get passed on and whose don't. And we see how changing environmental factors are continuously shaping the bodies of the inhabitants of given environments. But the star of the book is, of course, the beaks of the finches and their incredible variability. It's fascinating to see how different creatures derived from a common ancestor go on to specialize in different ecological niches, consuming different foods, and how the changing availability of these foods can bring about extreme selection pressures. And that's when we really see natural selection happening in front of our eyes. It's all of the ever changing factors happening together that make evolution so complex. A major theme of this book is that life is not static. The genes that make living things what they are constantly changing with each generation. The Beak of the Finch features countless examples supporting evolution in evolutionary trade offs, arms races, hybridization, speciation, niche specialization, and competitive exclusion, mutations in populations, resistance building, and much more. Also, an important factor for scientific theories is that they ought to allow a person to make predictions about the world. A clever scientist can create an experiment to test out the predictions that the theory makes. The Beak of the Finch shows how this was done in several different studies, most memorably John Endler's Trinidad guppy study, doing away with claims that evolution lacks predictive power. But besides the thorough support of evolution and the fascinating nature of the subject matter, there are other reasons The Beak of the Finch won the Pulitzer Prize. It's also Weiner's approach and writing style that makes this book endearing. The array of examples and points raised in the book really helps to capture the wonder of nature and life. I think it's humbling to learn about this kind of thing and can even cause a person to feel more respect or even reverence toward the natural world. When you see how all living things are connected to everything else, and you understand that we Homo sapiens are not separate from them but a part of it all, you can't help but have more respect for life. The Beak of the Finch excels in showing this. Okay, that's it for this one, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. What do you guys think about this topic? Have you read any good books on evolution? There's a lot of them. If you haven't read any yet, or even if you have, you definitely want to check out the 1995 Pulitzer Prize winner, The Beak of the Finch by Jonathan Weiner.